tuning in for the Black Diamond Show. Today is a very special day because we have a very, very special person with us today. We would like to welcome Amber to the stage today. And we would like to hear from Amber on the endeavors that she is about to go on, the adventures, what brought her here to music, to the label of Black Diamond, and most importantly, who she is as a person and as an artist. So we would like to hand the floor over to Amber. Thank you. And Amber, welcome.
Thank you. I just start reading.
Talk to the audience, Amber.
Okay.
Tell us what you've been going on. What brings you here?
So I was singing karaoke one night and I ran into Jonathan, and that's part of what brought me here. I guess the rest is in my story. Thank you for that introduction. Yes, so I guess I'll just start with where I'm from. My full name is Amber Rose Gonzalez. I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas on December 1st, 1990 to Susie and Xavier Gonzalez Jr. I always say I came into this world singing, and I'll leave it singing. I was born 1 month premature, a child so small I fit in a shoebox, according to my father. My saving grace, my lungs were fully developed. I often wonder how many hours I spent in that hospital, screaming and crying, proving to myself and everyone else that I belong in this world. When I was born, my father was enlisted in the United States Air Force. I came into the world on a military base. I often find this ironic, considering my tendency to bend and break rules. This rebellious streak has proven to be a gift and a curse. I wholeheartedly believe in taking risks, and that nothing worth having is ever easy to obtain. My parents took a risk on me when they paid for that first piano lesson when I was 9 years old. I'd come a long way from that fateful day in December when I was early to my own life. I had developed a hearty appetite for reading, and my lungs continued to grow, as did my love for music. I was ecstatic when I learned that my parents would be enrolling me in piano lessons. My older sister joined the middle school band, playing the flute, and since I come from a family of overachievers, it was expected I would play an instrument as well. Coincidentally, I also joined the school choir that year. It wasn't too long before I was singing and writing my own songs on the piano. As the years passed, my love for music never dampened. When the time came for me to join the middle school band, I chose the flute. It seemed to be working for my sister, so I thought I'd try my hand at it. The flute was my entire world for the next 7 years. I competed and succeeded in every way I possibly could. I felt so lucky to have found my purpose in life at such a young age. I was going to find a way to dedicate my life to music. I wanted to be a band director or a professional flautist. And, while my passion for the flute taught me discipline and dedication, it had taken away from my singing. In middle school, I was only allowed one elective. So all 3 years, my elective was band. My freshman year of high school, I took a chance and chose choir as my second elective. However, the choir introduced me to the catty world of teenage girls, so I lasted about half a year before I transferred to creative writing. While my passion for the flute taught me discipline and dedication, I would say one of the main obstacles in the recording process is having patience, because there's a lot of going back and doing things over again, and then putting a lot of work and hours into something, only to come to find out a week or two later that you might scrap it and start it all over again. Um, but in the end, usually it's totally worth it because you come out with something even better. As I neared the reality of adulthood, my parents and many adults around me constantly reminded me there was no financial security in music. I don't think they anticipated a global recession my first year of college. I truly believe experiencing poverty for the pursuit of higher education is a type of trauma that we don't discuss. I chose to major in literature and follow my mother's footsteps with a career in education.
Hello, and tell us about some of the obstacles of the recording process.
One of the main obstacles in the recording process is having patience, because there's a lot of going back and doing things over again, and then putting a lot of work and hours into something, only to come to find out a week or two later that you might scrap it and start it all over again. But in the end, usually it's totally worth it because you come out with something even better. Entering college during a recession made it very difficult to gain any independence from my parents. As is common with many millennials, I stayed local for college since it was what I could afford. I attended Northwest Vista College for my basics and then transferred to UTSA to finish my BA while assistant managing a tuxedo shop. By some miracle, I managed to stay away from drugs and alcohol. However, I developed a very bad eating disorder. Anorexia and bulimia took over my life. I suffered from severe untreated depression. Hiding an eating disorder is about as bad as hiding a drug habit. As someone who eventually did battle drug addiction, I can say a 0 out of 10 do not recommend either. With many years of therapy and psychiatry, I eventually came to learn that I was suffering from lack of control in my life. While I seemed very in control, the truth was I was not in control at all. I often wondered when I developed this need to be perfect all the time. Where did it come from? When did I decide that I was going to be my own worst enemy? I was 21 years old when I had my first suicide attempt. My parents had been in denial about my mental health for a while. There had been years of self-harm, mood swings, and overall turmoil that went ignored and untreated. I don't blame my parents for this. Traditional Hispanic households don't really believe in mental illness. My suicide attempt landed me in front of a psychiatrist and eventually a therapist. Thus began my decade-long journey with Prozac, Klonopin, Effexor, Abilify, Latuda, Trazodone, and the list goes on. My recovery from anorexia and bulimia officially began at age 21 and has never truly stopped. But then came love. I met Nathan in an American literature class my junior year of college. Our acquaintance began when he asked me if it was cold in the classroom, to which I replied yes. The next day he brought a jacket for me. Long story short, we were married 3 years later. By then, I had given up my pursuit of a career in education. I was reminded of my choir days and had decided to pursue a career in justice. I was working at a law firm as a legal assistant and taking an LSAT prep course. Needless to say, music was still a constant in my life, but it had faded into the background. I still listened to music every day. I often woke up with music in my head. I dreamed about music. It seems I had taken myself out of the music, but the music refused to leave me. This brings me to another unspoken rule of mine. Follow your heart. I have found that when I get too much in my head, I become cold. I followed my heart when I married Nathan. Marrying Nathan became the best decision I ever made when I gave birth to my daughter, Emma. At that point in my life, I had been jaded by the justice system and had scrapped law school, In its place, I was attending Our Lady of the Lake University and studying for my MA in Literature, Creative Writing, and Social Justice. By then, music was something I simply enjoyed. It had gone from being everything I lived for to being a dusty trophy on a shelf in my parents' attic. For 10 years, I focused on my career, love, and my small family. While Emma had been a surprise, Nathan was thrilled. I, on the other hand, was absolutely terrified. I was nearing the end of my studies at the lake and had graduated to a very established law firm. I was making more money than I ever had, plus benefits. My title was no longer legal assistant, but paralegal. I had done well for myself and was reconsidering law school. Suddenly, all these plans came to a screeching halt. Any parent knows that the world comes with a lot of sacrifice. It truly does. Finding out I was pregnant at 25 felt like I was pregnant at 18. I was terrified. I was not normal. Everything I had accomplished up to that point had been with the help of copious amounts of antidepressants. Despite being married, having a steady career, a house, and good health insurance, I did not feel ready to be a parent. My pregnancy was rough. I was working full-time at a law firm and was nearing my last semester of graduate school. I'm assuming all the stress led to a preeclampsia diagnosis. And like me, my daughter was born 5 weeks premature. However, she was not as lucky as I was. Emma spent 10 days in the NICU, while I spent 5 more days in the hospital. The 15-hour labor left me with a fractured tailbone, high blood pressure, and very high risk of stroke. But I would do it all again in a heartbeat. After Emma was born, I was allowed to hold her all of 5 seconds before she was carted away to be poked and prodded. It would be another day before the doctor allowed me to be wheeled to the NICU to see her. To say my life exponentially changed after becoming a parent would be an understatement. I suffered greatly from postpartum depression. I took the standard 6 weeks off for maternity leave, but it was not enough. I had absolutely no joy. For the first time in a long time, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't smile. I couldn't shower. There's no denying I was going through more than just the absence of music. However, I can't help but think things would have been a lot easier to get through if I'd had music. Nathan was working full-time as an insurance agent at USAA. Unfortunately, his paternity leave was not approved and he ended up losing his job. Another reason I did not want to have a child. American child care is non-existent. Did I mention my maternity leave was not paid? Needless to say, this was a very rough time in our lives. Between unemployment, the stress of being new parents, and my overbearing family, Nathan and I decided to end our marriage. Emma's first birthday had just passed, and I just graduated with my MA. There were many things to celebrate and be happy about, but instead Nathan and I just argued. Then one day I packed a bag and left to my parents. I never went back.
Amber, tell us about your life, your performance of your song.
So I've performed my song live twice so far at the Elbow Room. It was a small crowd. I'd say the second time I did it there were more people than the first time. I could not remember the words. I was so nervous. About halfway through the song, I forgot them, but the audience I recovered well, and the song was still well received. A lot of people were very supportive, and they said that they loved the song, so I told them where they could go find it, and where to download it, and I'd say they've been good first experiences, as I get more comfortable with performing the song live. So the Elbow Room is a small little hole in the wall place. It's a dive bar in San Antonio. And it's one of the places where I go to sing karaoke. And that's where I happened to meet Jonathan, my music producer, one night. So that was really cool. It's special to me in that way, that I have a lot of really special memories there. You know, if you're a regular, you're like family. It's a really cool place. I love it. I've made lots of great friends there. It's a place I've always felt safe. And I really do attribute a lot of what's happened to me in my life and a lot of the good things that have happened to me to a special place like the Elbow Room. It's nice.
Well, tell us about one of the good things that happened to you there, besides your record.
Okay. One of the good things that happened to me there, I met my best friend. She has a lot of dogs, and the Elbow Room is dog friendly, so she was able to take her dogs there, and I love dogs, so of course I started to pet her dogs, and it was kind of history after that. She and I became really close, like sisters. So that's one good thing. Another good thing that happened to me there is I really have grown as a vocalist and an artist. It has allowed me to go through stages in my training and in my art, and it's a place that I've been able to practice and get better. When I started going there, I smoked about, I'd say, 2 packs of cigarettes a week. And so how I sounded then, singing karaoke there and then, versus how I sing now, 2 years off cigarettes, you know, it's a really great place to compare and see the growth. And the staff there has seen my growth, and they've always been really supportive. And so it's definitely a special place to me. I've often regretted giving up on my marriage so easily. However, Nathan and I still remain best friends and co-parents. I truly believe that would not be the case had I stayed and tried to force our marriage to work. I was 27 years old when I got my first apartment completely on my own. As I sat in my empty apartment on the first night I moved in, I heard complete silence. That was when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd been completely alone. I was always at work, at school, or taking care of Emma and Nathan. Any free moments in between went to trying to meet my family's impossible expectations. The silence was strange. It was peaceful, but also a bit too much. I decided to put on some music. I turned on YouTube and put on one of my favorite songs, Put Your Records On by Corinne Bailey Rae. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I sang. That first year on my own was a whirlwind. I experienced a series of unfortunate events, all of which started with losing my job. My newfound freedom and the stress of being a single mother consumed me. Nathan and I had agreed on split custody, so he had Emma half the week, leaving me with a few nights to myself. These nights often left me feeling lonely. I often drowned out the loneliness with Tinder and alcohol.
Amber, tell us about what your investment in the art process of your newest single.
Okay, so the first day I showed up at the studio, Jonathan said, hey, I'm going to play you this song and I want to see if you can write to it. And that's when he played, what now should have never fallen in love. So I hear, he plays a song and it's, just the song by itself, no lyrics or anything. And I said, yeah, I think I can write to this. So that's when we started just kind of throwing lyrics around and ended up with this song, like I mentioned earlier, previously, that, it's a process. And again, you have to have a lot of patience. So, I had to write 3 different drafts of the song, like 3 different sets of lyrics. And then we kind of like played them and then combined some and then scrapped it and then started again. And it was a lot, but it was worth it. So I'd say my overall involvement was helping write the lyrics and then of course the vocals. But it was really, I really did like the single. I think it's a great collaboration and I'm really excited about it. I had no one telling me what I should or shouldn't do, and it was almost the end of me. My drunken escapades and Tinder affairs eventually led me to losing my job. I was constantly showing up to the firm late, forgetting important deadlines, leaving tasks incomplete. I ended up teaching English online to children in Beijing out of desperation to pay the bills, and even then, I still needed help. This vulnerability and desperation led me to the worst relationship a struggling single mother could ever find herself in. I fell in love with a legitimately crazy person. His name was Alex, and I thought he was the best thing I'd ever known, but he wasn't. In fact, that relationship ended with him in jail for choking a pregnant woman. Alex was bad for me in so many ways. He enabled my bad relationship with alcohol, along with sucking up all my financial resources. Alex was verbally, physically, and sexually abusive. When I tried to leave him, he broke into my apartment and tried to rape me. I managed to stave him off and call the police. I expected him to flee, but he stayed. When the police arrived, he refused to leave and denied everything. I began to panic when the police did not cuff him immediately. They suggested I go stay with my parents for the night. My parents were out of town, and Alex knew that. I told the officer he was not performing due diligence, and this man was not going to leave me alone. I won't skate around the truth here. The officer was a white male with blue eyes and weighed about the same as Alex. I was a small Hispanic female at 5 feet, 2 inches, and weighing 140 pounds. Officer misogyny didn't take too kindly to my criticism of his work performance. Long story short, that's the first time I got arrested. When I got out, Alex had already called my parents and Nathan. Everyone knew I had been in jail, and Alex blamed it on my alcoholism. As a result, I went sober, which actually turned out to be really bad for Alex. During my sobriety, my mind became clearer. For the first time in a long while, I felt good. As a result of this newfound control, I finally got the courage to leave Alex for good. My case got dismissed, and I started to move on with my life. Although Alex left me broke and living with my parents again. But he did not go away easily. He ended up sending Nathan and my parents all the intimate pictures I'd ever sent him, sent me death threats, and even stalked me. Calling the police did nothing. Eventually, after at least 20 different police reports, he was caught with a warrant for choking a pregnant woman. I was right from the beginning. The only thing that stopped this man from killing me was him being behind bars. Of all the things Alex did to me, there was one night in particular he caused me the most harm. A friend of his invited us to her apartment to drink and play board games. Her name was Valerie. Valerie lived with her 2 daughters and loved to drink. So did I. We got along great. We stayed up laughing and talking long after the girls went to bed and Alex had fallen asleep. That's when Valerie called Paul, her meth dealer, and that was the first night I did meth. Surprisingly, that is not when my addiction began. It would not be until half a year later, when I was up partying with another guy who was also bad news, that I called Valerie and asked for Paul's info. There was really no going back after that. The Alex ordeal had put a lot of stress on me and my family. As a result of him sharing all my personal pictures and telling all my family that I had a bad cocaine habit, I'd done cocaine a total of twice in my whole life at that point. Nathan opened a custody case against me. As all of this was going on, my keyboard and my flutes sat in the closet. I'd stopped singing. Despite being sober, which does help with depression, I was still extremely unhappy. My situation had landed my entire family in group counseling, for which of course I was the punching bag. That's when I got my bipolar diagnosis, which would later become borderline personality diagnosis, and then complex PTSD. I know, I'm impressive. Unfortunately, I did not attend individual counseling during this time, and since I lost my job, I lost my health insurance. I hadn't been on meds in over a year. Between work, being stalked by a psychopath, and my entire family truly believing I was a drug addict, I became one. I stopped caring about myself. If there's one thing my daughter ever believes about me, I truly hope it's that she knows I will never abandon her, especially when she is most in need. Sadly, I did not have this support. I was victim shamed and blamed for everyone's problems. Even the group counselor interjected many times in my defense, but I never felt more alone. And then I met Kevin. I have no excuse for being with Kevin other than the fact that I was on hard drugs. Don't do meth. It leaves you with nothing except a long list of health problems and regrets, usually named Dave or Jimmy or Steve or what's his face. When I could finally move out of my parents' house again, I made the mistake of moving Kevin in with me. The dust around the custody battle had settled, and I was seeing Emma regularly again. Moving out was my attempt at demonstrating I was responsible enough to have my child back half the time. Then the shit hit the fan again. Kevin invited a homeless man to stay with us. By this point in time, I was working as a freelance paralegal. I found it was actually rather liberating and paid better than anything else I'd been doing, but I still struggled, and being the only person working on the cases, I often found myself working late hours. That's when the meth addiction got really bad. At first, it was just energy here and there. Then I noticed how much weight I was losing. I was 10 years into recovery from my eating disorder when I relapsed. My meth addiction was never about getting high. It was always about losing weight. Everything had always been about losing weight. Later, I would come to acknowledge it was no coincidence that I was heavy on drugs during a time when my family had pretty much abandoned me. They wanted nothing to do with me. I later found out from Nathan that during this time, my parents were actually trying to take custody of Emma from me and Nathan. While things do seem very grim for me at this point, I am serious when I say they only got worse. The homeless man Kevin invited to stay with us ended up sexually assaulting me one night. Kevin got upset and stabbed him outside of my apartment. Naturally, the police were called and Officer Machismo showed up this time. Should have come as no surprise to me when I ended up cuffed for refusing to answer any questions without an attorney present. I ended up in solitary confinement this time around. No food or clothes for 4 days. When I was finally let out to shower, I didn't know what day it was. I tried calling my father, since his was the only phone number I could remember, through my hunger and meth withdrawals. I'd never been more relieved when my father answered. He told me it was my birthday. I turned 30, naked in a jail cell. The call only lasted a few minutes, and I could hear disappointment in his voice. He didn't even want to hear what happened. We hung up, and I cried. The guard was nice enough to let me shower in cold water. no soap. That was a relief. I'd not been allowed a shower since my assault, and I could still smell him on me. After my quick shower, I was forced back to my cell. The cell was the size of a small bedroom. I sat and stared at the door for hours and hours. It was a faded orange. If agony was a color, it would be painted on that door. I felt like I was never going to leave that cell. My glasses had been taken by a guard and holding for my safety, so I couldn't even see the windows outside. I never knew if it was night or day. Luckily, my cell was near the guard station, so I was able to hear the radio. I found it interesting how the station would change depending on the guard. On what I believed to be day 3 of my solitude, one of the guards opened my cell. A man was with her, a psychiatrist. He asked me if I was suicidal. I was alone with no food or clothes for 3 days. I could smell my rapist on me. There was no end to this sight and misery.
Amber, how connected do you feel about the music?
Well, I feel connected to all music. I guess that's where I'll start. This music in particular, I mean, this song, is about heartache. It's about finding out that, the person you loved is not who you thought they were. And, unfortunately, and most people by my age knows that feeling once or twice, 3 times if they're unlucky. But, so that's how I connected to this music. The second that I heard it, and that's kind of how I feel with most of the music my producer shows me, is like, I feel a connection, I feel a story. All the music tells me a story. And I just sometimes feel like I'm just that bridge between, when it's an idea and then it becomes something concrete. I'm just like the messenger. So yes, I was suicidal, but I knew better, and I replied, no. I'd done this dance so many times before. He gave the guard permission to give me clothes. What seemed like days went by, and I still did not receive my clothes. I was losing serious hope when I heard the radio station change. That meant a new guard. The guard messed with the station and eventually landed on Queen's Somebody to Love. I felt my heart sink. I thought of my father and all his music. I had let him down. Quietly, I hummed along. Then I started singing the words, and they got louder and louder. I kept waiting for the guard to yell, "Shut up," like they often did, but she didn't. In fact, she turned the radio down and told me, "Go on." So I sang louder, eventually ending the song with, "Can anybody find me something to wear?" The guard eventually opened the door laughing and handed me a jail uniform. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I wasn't used to a world where singing was rewarded. I was even given dinner that evening. All I dreamed about was music and singing. I promised myself if I ever got out of there, I would start singing again.
Amber, how do you feel about the role and the responsibility of the recording process?
Well, there's a lot to learn. And I guess I'll bring it full circle again with just, patience is something that I have to practice as a mother a lot. But I'm now learning, and discipline as a musician. I grew up, the discipline, I've always been very disciplined when it comes to my music and practicing and all of that. Now, when it comes to the more of the patience, I'm having to learn patience as a musician. I have to be patient with the music. I have to be patient with myself. I have to be patient with, anyone else who's working on the music with me. and just have faith in the music, I think, is something also that's I'm having to learn how to have faith in the music. Now, there are moments when it just feels like, wow, I should have been doing this my whole life. And it feels like all of those frustrations and all of those, hiccups and growing pains, are worth it. That night, Scarred favored Christmas music. I'll Be Home for Christmas flowed out of the speakers. I sat on the floor in my cell, feeling more hopeful than I had in days. I finally felt like a human as opposed to an animal. Warm clothes and a full belly definitely helped, but I believe I was in good spirits because I sang. I started to sing along to the music, imagining I was on a stage singing. A stage with lots of lights, beautiful sounds, and no gel cells. When I came back from my fantasy, I realized I was singing loudly again. Only this time I wasn't singing alone. I could hear other prisoners singing along with me from their cells. For 1 minute, there was no screaming or crying. There was only music. Eventually, I was moved to a unit where I spent 2 weeks begging my parents to bail me out. My bail was set at 40 grand. Officer Machismo decided to book me for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The 2 weeks I spent in jail, the charge was dropped a year later due to insufficient evidence. When my parents finally bailed me out, I discovered my apartment had been broken into and my car was stolen. Once again, I was left with nothing. Then came the ultimate spiral. When I got out of jail, I completely disappeared. I went crazy, drinking, doing drugs, participating in risky behaviors. I dropped down to under 100 pounds, and I even came close to homelessness. This destructive behavior brought me around some very shady characters, one of which invited me to a karaoke bar called Sir Winston's Pub. Sir Winston's is special because it has karaoke 7 nights a week. That night, I remembered a drug I loved more than meth, music. I sang my heart out that night, and I haven't looked back since. It's been 2.5 years since that fateful night when music came back to me. Or should I say, it's been 2.5 years since I found music again. Turns out it never left me. I'm sure it goes without saying that my encounters with the justice system left me extremely jaded as a paralegal, and is the reason for my current PTSD diagnosis. However, my keyboard is no longer gathering dust, and I've been performing my own songs on open mic nights. While I may never be famous or sell millions of records, the important thing is I'm creating something that is meant for everyone. Music doesn't care if you've been to jail, who you've dated, or how much education you have. Music doesn't care. Oh, my bad. Good. Hey, music is like magic. It can change the mood in a room, put a smile on your face, and even make you cry. It can transport you to any moment in time, help you relive a memory, but it also keeps you in the present. My main goal with music is to help people get through life. I want to create songs that people can play when they're happy, sad, content, hungry, angry, horny, whatever. I want to help create a world where music is everywhere, because music is what makes the world go round. And the words of William Shakespeare, when words fail, music speaks, and above all else, to thine own self be true.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Hold on. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. And a couple more questions for Amber before we go. First of all, let's all give Amber a round of applause. Okay, so Amber, what is your goal for the next 5 years?
I would like to release a few albums, at least.
How do you feel about the first song that you recorded?
I'm really excited about it.
You bet. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to Amber now, but thank you for joining in, and goodbye. Okay, cut.